So last week we already discussed about the matter, regarding matter, what are the three states of matter, and even the fourth state, how it created, what are the phases in order for a state to change. So what are the processes, and what are the mixtures, what is the difference between homogeneous and heterogeneous mixture. Also, we tackled about chemical formulas, some sort of chemical formulas. So that is the introduction, overall lesson in our chapter. So for today's lesson, we are just about to continue this with perhaps with these objectives. Let me see. We already identify the matter and its properties. We are able also to explain the states of matter. We also differentiate matter or the mixtures and the pure substance, and identify this is the thing that we are about to discover today. So we are about to identify the structure of an atom, familiarize the parts. So we already done with this one. So we are able to somehow familiarize the periods and groups in the periodic table of elements, but we are not be able to tackle each element. So what are the function of each element? But as we go on, we are about to discover those things, or we are about to learn the function of each element. Next is to differentiate ionic, covalent, and hydrogen bond. Today we are going to discuss this one and identify some of the proponents of classic and modern atomic theory. In the modern atomic theory, so the first question here, since we talk about matter is composed of atom, and that atom composed of different particles or subatomic particles. We also discovered last week that all matter is made up of atoms. These are the part of the atoms, or this part of the structure of an atom, wherein the protons are the positively charged particles, and some has mass in his nucleus or nucleus. We have also neutrons. It has no charge. Okay, so some has mass and it is located in the nucleus. So don't forget that neutron, let me emphasize that neutron and protons are located inside the nucleus. Around that nucleus, we have what we call electron. Since electron and proton do not interact with each other somehow, as you can see, since electron is located outside the nucleus. Electrons, imagine the solar system, even the earth surrounds or revolves around the sun. So just like electron rather, electrons revolve around the nucleus. So this is now the atomic structure. So we're in an element. So we have what we call atomic number, or the atomic number is equals to number of proton. What does it mean? For example, the hydrogen. So the hydrogen there is only one proton in that particular element, but they have different neutrons. Okay, so as we continue, we will discover why this particular element has different varieties. So in a neutral atom, since when we say neutral, there is a zero charge. So the number of proton is equal to the number of electron. And for the atomic mass, so the atomic mass is the number of neutrons plus protons. So pag ipag-add lang natin sila, that is the time that we are able to get the atomic mass of a particular element. The number of protons for an atom never changes. As I've said a while ago, the number of protons for an atom never changes. So, but the number of neutrons can be changed if there is what we call the reaction. So, or the collision of particles wherein that particular element accepts another type of neutron, then reaction or chemical reaction occurs, then magkakaroon ng release of energy. So lalabas yung delta and alpha beta particles, and even neutrino sometimes, especially in the what we call Big Bang nucleosynthesis. So you've studied, if I'm not mistaken, you already study about the physical science on how the universe is started. So madadaanan natin ito. So isotope, aside from the name element, there is what we call isotope. So isotope and elements are the same. Kapag kukunin mo yung definition nila, they are the same. They are what we call elements, or isotopes are atoms of the same element with different atomic or different number of neutrons. So for example, I have here a mango. Okay? Kapag may mangga ako, tapos isang klaseng mangga lang yun. Lahat ng iba't ibang klaseng mangga na yun, meron ako. Okay? So I have here a mango. Mango lang ang sinabi ko. But would you like to give me an example or variety of a mango? We have here Bea.
Ako, sir.
Si Bea muna, Cam. Okay.
Pakiulit po, sir, ng question po.
Would you like to give me an example of a mango or variety of a mango?
Apple mango, sir.
Apple mango? Okay, let me check. Sige, may narinig na akong apple mango. Tama naman. How about you, Kami?
Ano po, sir? Yung
sir.
Carabao mango.
Carabao mango. How about you, Chowel? Ay, Clowell.
Clowell.
Sorry. Clowell.
Indian mango.
Indian mango. Clowell, Indian mango.
Yes po, sir.
Okay, Carabao, apple mango, and apple mango and Carabao mango. So those are the varieties of a mango, isn't it? So as you can see, you observe that there are a lot of varieties. If we try to compare the element, yung element dun is yung mangga. The term mangga is the generic name. But there are a lot of varieties. So dun napapasok yung pagkakaiba with the same number of proton but different number with neutron. Kasi nag-iba yung structure nung particular atom na yun kasi may dumagdag na particle. So nakuha yon kung anong pagkakaiba ng elements sa atom. This is the example, a Big Bang nucleosynthesis. So a Big Bang nucleosynthesis after the expansion of the universe. Okay, so after the expansion of the universe for about 10 milliseconds, these particles was created, especially this hydrogen came from the quarks. So sa mga quarks na yon, nanggaling yung hydrogen na yan. So kung makikita nyo itong hydrogen na ito, nagkaroon siya ng collision sa isang neutron. Dito na papasok yung tinatawag nating deuterium. If you try to remember your lesson regarding on Big Bang nucleosynthesis, so this is the best example on how the elements was created. From light elements to heavy elements up to the elements that we are currently using that located or that can be categorized and organized in the periodic table of elements. So after this one, we have here tritium or tritium. This is where the collision or nagbanggaan, nag-merge yung proton at dalawang neutron. So they call it tritium or tritium. And you will observe that once there is a particle that is being added to a particular atom, okay, or a particular element, nagkakaroon ng pagdagdag ng atomic mass. So as you can see sa deuterium, nagkaroon ng dalawang mass number. And same with tritium, nagkaroon ng tatlong mass number. But hindi siya nagdagdag ng atomic number kasi isa lang yung atom niya. But the neutron added, okay? Nagdagdag siya kaya dumagdag yung mass niya. The mass number increases once there is a particle such as neutron added to a particular element or particular particle that is not being recognized by the other elements. So that is how the universe is started. Let me show you how these things collide with each other. So, okay, let me stop here. And then, so nakikita naman sa screen natin, no? So this is the proton. This one that I'm holding with my cursor is a proton. Let's put in here. And that proton is what we call hydrogen. It has positive ion or positive charge particle since it is a proton. But once this neutron collided with the hydrogen, nag-collide siya, nagkaroon ng collision. So that is the time that we will call it deuterium. Okay? And another one, imagine niyo na lang, ikaw itong hydrogen, tapos may lumapit sa mundo mo. 'Di ba? At nagkatagpo kayong dalawa, pinagsama kayo. Pinagtagpo kayo, 'di ba? Pwede rin yung nag-mediate, yung pilit na pinagtagpo nga kayo pero hindi kayo tinadhana, 'di ba? So,
Si
yun.
Cupido.
Okay, so that is how nucleosynthesis is started. So how elements is started. So pinakita ko pero wag kayo masyadong matrigger dun sa sinabi ko, no. So parang halos ganun lang yung mangyayari. Pinagtagpo kayo pero at the same time maghiwalay din yung neutron at proton kasi nga magkakaroon ng formation of another elements. Kaya kung sabihin na natin sa buhay natin, no, may mga bagay talaga na kailangan nating talikuran para mas maging masaya, para mas magaan, para gumaan ang pakiramdam natin. Or we need this thing to kumbaga parang resolve natin. Pero kung may babalik at babalik yan.
Sir,
May pinagdadaanan
Yes,
ka ba,
sir.
sir?
Sir, kung may pinagdadaanan ka po, okay lang. Damayan ka namin.
Hindi, wala naman.
Sir, pag-usapan natin yan.
Sir, may tanong lang po ako.
Okay, Chloel.
Ano ko lang, sir. When neutrons collide in protons, it is called, sir, ano po?
Deuterium na. Ito yung nandito.
Deuterium? Deuterium?
Kapag
Okay na po,
isa
sir.
lang yung
Thank you.
nag-collide dun sa sa proton.
Opo.
By the way, ito yung pinaka the best na example from from the Big Bang Theory, but in 1900s, 1921 if I'm not mistaken, there is another theory that is being used, or kumbaga marami na ring naniniwala. Ito yung bounce cycle theory yata. Kung tama yung term na yun, so kumbaga parang cycle lang yung nangyayari. Coming from a white hole, then isasak siya ng black hole, then mag-form naman ng another particles. So parang ganun yung bounce cycle theory. So compared to Big Bang theory, the universe is continuously expanding, 'di ba? Tapos until such time na may mag-flat doon, tapos doon na nabuo yung universe. So continue na tayo. Next is the ions. So ions is an atom, okay? So it's an atom that gains or loses an electron, which is called an ion. So kung makikita nyo kanina, ang proton natin is a positive ion. Okay? So if the atom loses electrons, it becomes positively charged. Kumbaga, nagbigay ka. Yung binigay mo or yung pinagbigyan mo magiging positive charge yun. Kasi nga, in the law of chemical bond, especially the ionic bond, there is what we call the octet rule. Kumbaga, bago ka makapag-bond, kailangan mo ng 8 electrons each orbit. But dun sa hydrogen, so may exemption na mga element, or ang hydrogen isa dun sa exemption kasi nga may dalawa lang siyang tinatawag nating electron. Okay, so this is the reason. So always remember that positive is equal to negative. Okay, so if we change those numbers, the charge moves in the direction of the larger number of particles. Kumbaga, this is where the electronegativity of a particle or element. Kumbaga kung sino yung binigyan mo, siya yung makakapag-attract ng mas maraming particles or negatively charged particles. Just like yung NaCl, so kung makikita nyo sa susunod dito, kung makikita nyo, yung negative charge, yung pinagbigyan, magiging negative charge. Tama? Ito yung tinatawag nating octet rule na sinasabi ko kanina, na bago makapag-bond ang isang or ang dalawang element, kailangan muna nilang magkaroon ng 8 electron in their orbit. Okay? So, kung makikita mo nyo ito, yung sodium, meron ni isang orbit sa outer shell niya, outermost shell or level. Para mabalanse, he needs or the sodium needs to donate this electron papunta sa chlorine. Okay, para makuha yung tinatawag na sodium chloride. So kapag cation, kapag sinabi natin cation, it is a positive, and anion, it is a negative. So kung mapapansin nyo, yung may electronegativity dito, yung pinagbigyan, mas malakas siya makahatak ng negative charge particles kasi nga siya yung napagbigyan ng particular electron na galing sa sodium. Okay, so this is an example of ionic bond, by the way. And next is what we call the covalent bond. So the covalent bond here is what we call the pair of negative electron are shared between two non-metal. So compared to ionic bond, ang ionic bond is metal to non-metal. Okay, while covalent bond is non-metal to non-metal. And that two non-metal atoms to acquire the electron of configuration of a noble gas. As you can see in here, sa taas na picture nito, it is an example of covalent bond. Same here, this is covalent bond. And this covalent bond, kung nakikita nyo, mas malaki yung ang electronegativity or mas mayroon siyang partially negative charge ang oxygen kasi nga ang tawag doon, mas nag-i-stay yung electron mas madalas dun sa orbit ng oxygen, kaya mas meron siyang partial negative charge. Okay, so as you can see, this is the covalent bond. Kung makikita nyo, this is an example of covalent bond. So nag-bond yung oxygen and dalawang hydrogen. So kung titingnan nyo naman sa baba, kung makikita nyo may break lines, may broken lines dito. Ito yung tinatawag nating hydrogen bond. Yung hydrogen bond naman, ina-attract niya yung negative charge ng oxygen para magkaroon ng pansamantalang bonding. Kaya nga ang water, napakahirap tanggalin yung molecules nila, o kumbaga paghiwa-hiwalay ng molecules ng tubig kasi nga it composed of covalent bond. It is not easy to separate unless you really increase the temperature or the temperature of a water or a certain liquid. So compared to water, mas mabilis maghiwalay yung bond ng alcohol compare sa water. So mas weaker yung bond nung nasa alcohol, mas greater yung bond ng nasa water, which is the covalent bond. Okay, next na tayo. Next is the atomic theory. So when we say theory, it is the accepted ideas coming from various or specific scientists, but it is not been proven, but they are using the principles that is being what do you call this? Kumbaga pinagdaanan na patunayan, kumbaga kulang na lang ng sabihin na natin konting ebidensya or evidence para hindi ma-falsify yung ginagawa niyang principles para maging law. Siguro kung nabubuhay pa nun si Newton sa panahon ni Einstein, meron kasi siyang kasabay doon si Einstein na tinatawag natin si Karl Popper. Isa dun si Karl Popper na mahilig mag-falsify ng mga theories and ideas. So hinahanapan niya palagi ng butas. Siguro kung siguro kung buhay pa ito si Newton, si Sir Isaac Newton, siguro baka nahanapan rin ng butas ni Karl Popper. Kaya yun. So, i-share ko lang regarding naman siya sa universal gravity, yung kay Newton. And while for Einstein, it is the general theory of relativity. Okay, so the space-time singularity ang pinag-aralan. But here, papaano ba nagsimula yung atom? Saan ba siya nagsimula? Early in this early theory, we have here one of the famous philosopher, at the same time scientist, named Aristotle. He stated that all matters flows continuously and composed of 4 elements. Aside from Aristotle, we have Empedocles. He also said the same statement, where they believe that there are 4 elements, which is the fire, air, earth, and water. Democritus. We have here Democritus. Democritus is the one who gave us the idea, and the modern scientists, that if you try to divide the pieces of paper until such time that you are not able to separate them or to divide them. So that is the time that Democritus concluded that that kind of particle, or the particle cannot be divided until such time na nandun na siya sa pinaka-maximum subunits niya, or units, or smallest units, which is the atom. So that's why he came up with the term atom, which means indivisible. So means ng atoms indivisible or uncuttable. Okay? Again, atoms are indivisible. So atomos came from a Greek word coined by Democritus, which means indivisible, okay, or uncuttable. So that is how Democritus disagreed with Aristotle and Empedocles. But syempre yung mga panahong yan, the most what do you call this, parang artista kasi itong si Aristotle that time. He is famous with his various experiments and discoveries. He is the one who coined the term science. So that's why he is very famous. So as I've said that, can you imagine that 2,000 years, after 2,000 years pa nila na-realize na tama pala si Democritus. He died believing that his ideas are wrong, but all in all, tama pala. So what if the other scientists or the other philosophers or Greek philosophers were correct about their theory, pero hindi lang na pagtuunan ng pansin? And that is the thing that we aren't able to discover. So siguro may mga scientists din na magpapatuloy ng kanilang mga nasimulan. Okay? Next is the modern theory. So in the modern theory, the most famous person who revised or created this theory is none other than John Dalton. He's from England, so he was born from 1800s. So he focused himself in studying about the atoms together with other persons, where he gathered those data and come into conclusion with this type of ideas or theory. He said that all elements are composed of atoms and they are indestructible or indestructible like as a solid sphere. So they cannot be created nor destroyed. So this is what we call the law of conservation of matter. Next is the atoms of the same element are exactly alike. Okay? So kanina na natin to napagdaanan na. And next is atoms of different elements are different. So they have their own characteristics. So that's why we have radioactive part in the periodic table of elements, enable for us to differentiate what kind of element that we are dealing with. So just like the tungsten, so the tungsten is usually used in bulb. So, one of the toughest metal na kaya suffice kumbaga mag-endure ng electricity or heat coming from electricity. Okay, next are the compounds are formed by the joining of atoms of two or more elements. So this is where they are able to come up with chemical formulas. Okay, so that is the modern theory. So aside from that, we have here the discovery of particles such as in 1897 in England, Thomson or J.J. Thomson discovered the negatively charged particles through his experiment of cathode ray, where magnet or negative charge or positive charge magnet, tinapat niya dun sa cathode ray na yon. Okay? Yung cathode ray na yun, ginagamit yun sa sinaunang TV natin. So, isa yun sa magandang discovery din ng in terms of innovation and innovation of our technology. So, sa cathode ray na yun, he discovered that the positive pole of the magnet attracts the negative charge of a particular atom or particle. So, that is the time that he called it electrons. Next is Rutherford. So, in 1908, he discovered the nucleus. Okay, and Bohr, in Denmark, 1913, he said that electrons were in orbit of a energy levels around the nucleus. Ito na yung sinasabi nating yung path ng electron. So, that concludes our lesson for today.